Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to Temple Emeth and to our Shabbat Morning Service. It's my pleasure to greet you from the Rabbi Louis J. Siegel Sanctuary in Teaneck, New Jersey. If you are watching us on live stream this morning, now is the perfect time to bring your copy of Mishkan Tefillah to your computer or your screen. I just learned this week that the edition of Mishkan Tefillah for Shabbat weekdays and festivals has been removed from the CCAR website. And so I don't know how many weeks I was telling people that you could access a copy in flipbook format when indeed it wasn't true. So this is what I'll say. If you're watching us, and this is a regular thing, and you don't yet have a copy of Mishkan Tefillah at home, please come to Temple Emeth and borrow one. Or you can go to the CCAR website, CCAR Press website, and you can download one for a certain amount of money. I'm not sure how much it is. And you can follow along. But for today, I cannot offer you a digital option for the Siddur. However, I can still offer you a wonderful service where you'll hear great prayers and wonderful music and a Torah portion. So stick with us even if you cannot download the digital flipbook version of our Siddur. What you can do is you can post a comment in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. It can be something as simple as Shabbat Shalom. It can be your name, your location. We're going to observe Yom HaAtzmaut as part of today's service, so you can wish your fellow online worshipers a happy Yom HaAtzmaut, even though technically it was 2 days ago. And in doing so, we form bonds of virtual community among others who are also watching us on live stream. For those who are here in the sanctuary, Bruchim Habaim, the copy of Mishkan Tefillah that you will need is right in front of your seat, so you can pick up a copy of that if you haven't already. And we are now ready to begin our service with an opening song. So I invite you to turn to page 188, and at the top of the page you will find our opening song. Please join with us as Cantor Tillam leads us in singing Hine Matov.
Hine Matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad.
We turn now to page 194, where we find the blessing, thanking God for the miracle of the human body. Our existence as human beings is possible only through the miraculous combination of body and soul, and so, our next two blessings, thank God for these two corresponding miracles. Please read with me. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh chol basar umafli la'asot. We turn now to page 196, and we thank God for the soul. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biado nefesh kol chai, veruach kol basar ish. As we turn now to page 198, we find the Nesim B'chol Yom, the blessings for our daily miracles. We begin chanting them consecutively, beginning on 198 and continuing on the next few even-numbered pages.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sechel v'bina le'avchin ben yom u'ben laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hokei ha'ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, lokaret al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, amechlin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish ahumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, anoten la'yav koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir shina meinai utnumam me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara.
We turn now to page 204 as we join together in the blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai hamalamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. We turn now to page 206 as we join together in an excerpt of Oral Torah. We offer this in fulfillment of the blessing. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. We turn now to page 215, where we find Ashrei, an acrostic responsive psalm. Please join with me. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od yahalelu chasela.
Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am she'Adonai Elohav.
Tehila leDavid aromimcha Elohai hamelech, v'avarcha shimcha leolam va'ed.
B'chol yom avarcheka, v'halala shimcha leolam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai umehula me'od, v'ligdulato en cheker.
Dur l'dur yishabach ma'asecha, ugvuratecha yagidu.
Hadar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha.
V'zuz noratecha yomeru, ugdulatcha saprena.
Zecher rav tuvcha yabi'u, v'tzidkatcha yiranenu.
Chanun v'rachum Adonai, erech ha'payim u'tochaseh.
Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol ma'asav.
Yoducha Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yivarchucha.
Kevod malchutcha yomeru, ugvratecha yedaberu.
Le'odia livnei adam gvurotav, u'chvod adam malchutav.
Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador.
Somech Adonai l'chol anofli, v'zokef l'chol akfufim.
Einechol elecha yesaberu, v'atanoten lehem et ochlam be'ito.
Hoteach et yadecha, u'maspia l'chol chai ratzon.
Tzadik Adonai b'chol deracha, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav.
Karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol asher yikra'u v'emet.
Ritzon Yereav Yaseh, v'et Shabbatam yishma v'yoshiem.
Shomer Adonai et kol oavav, v'et kol hashayim yashmi.
Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'varech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed.
Va'anachnu nivarech ya, me'atav ve'ad olam. Hallelujah.
We continue now on page 223. Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai, El Melech Gadol Batishbachot, El HaHodaot Adon Haniflaot, Habocher B'Shirei Zimra, Melech Elchei HaOlamim. Praised are you, sovereign of wonders, crowned in adoration, delighting in song, eternal majesty.
Yitkada Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich mochutei. B'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei. To kol Beit Yisrael. Bagala, u'v'zman kariv. V'imiru. Amen. Yesh mei Rabba mivarach. Le'olam olam me'olam maya. Yitbarach, Yishabach, Vidbar, Vidroma, Vidnosei, Vitala, Shemei Grisha Berichu, Le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata, Tush bechata v'nechemata, Damiran me'alma, V'imiru.
Amen. We rise for the Baruch Hu, page 226.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach le'olam va'ed.
On page 229, we read in the middle of the page, You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light. And from nothing at all we could perceive in a world that has turned old, a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence, how much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea. You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah, focus our minds on your mitzvot, unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. Together, gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praise be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael, be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Avad.
Please be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך, בביתך ובלכתך, בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We turn in our Siddurim to page 239 as we read responsively in English in the middle of the page. The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor? Asks God. We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy. Praise to God Most High. Blessed is God and deserving of blessing.
Mi kamocha badim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele, Shira chadasha shibchu geulim l'shimecha al tzvatayam, yachad kulam hadu v'imlichu et ameru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Yabai bai 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 bai, yabai bai bim bam, yabai bai 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 bai, yabai bai bim bam, ay bai bai bai, yabai bai bim bam, yabai bai bai, yabai bai bim bam. To Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Kuma, 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 Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufidei chinumecha, Yehuda Yisrael, Ufidei chinumecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Goleinu Adonai tzvot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
Our service continues on page 242 with the tefillah. Please rise if you are able for the tefillah.
Adonai, Sifatai tiftachu pi yagid teilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Gadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Pnei Akol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'migula livnei b'neihem, L'man Shema v'Yavam, Melech Ozer, U'Mashiach Magen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ezrat Sarah, Ata Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atarav le'Oshia, Morid HaTal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מחמוך בעל גבורות ומדם מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום. ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך הארץ כבודו.
אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. תשכח אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם לעולם ועד. לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, נגיד גודלך. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. We turn now to page 250, and to honor Shabbat, we join together in singing Vishamru.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית העולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אל תלך לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש.
We acknowledge the important spiritual element of Shabbat rest with a reading on page 252. I invite you to read with me in the middle of the page. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai, our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name, rest on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh ha-Shabbat. We turn now to page 258, where we find a prayer for peace. Grant peace, goodness, and blessing, grace, kindness, and mercy to us and to all your people, Israel. Bless us, our Creator, all of us together, through the light of your presence. Truly, through the light of your presence, Adonai, our God, you gave us a Torah of life, the love of kindness, justice, and blessing, mercy, life, and peace. May you see fit to bless your people Israel at all times, at every hour, with your peace. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael. Ba shalom. We take a moment now for Tfilat Halev, a time to offer the prayer of our hearts to God. Pages 260 and 261 offer inspirational readings for this moment.
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha.
We continue now with our service for the reading of the Torah, Seder Kriyat Torah, which begins in your Siddur on page 363. Happy is the one who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding, for its value is greater than silver, its yield than fine gold. It is more precious than rubies, no treasure can match it. We continue in the middle of the next page. Please rise.
Susherim Ashichem Useru Hitrei Olam V'Yavam Elecha Kavod Mi Uze Melech HaKavod Adonai Tzvaot Hu Melech HaKavod
In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shema, Gadol Adonai Iti, Univara Shema Yachdav. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Ha'olam Omed, Al Shlosha Devarim, Ha'olam Omed, Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim, Al HaTorah שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על שלושה דברים.
Please be seated. Coincidentally, that song ended at just the perfect time.
Coincidentally.
This week's Torah portion is Parashat Kiddushim, one of my favorite Torah portions, and a beloved one of the Jewish people. After all, Parashat Kiddushim encapsulates so much of what we consider to be Jewish ethical behavior. It speaks about honoring our parents. It speaks about not cursing the deaf or putting a stumbling block before the blind. In other words, not mocking or taking advantage of another person's disabilities. And perhaps the most famous line, the most all-encompassing line, is you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Interspersed among many of these commandments of ethical behavior is the phrase Ani Adonai, I am the eternal, or Ani Adonai Elohechem, I am the eternal your God, because to me it is a reinforcement that it is not just ethical behavior, it is godly behavior, that throughout Parashat Kiddushim we are reminded that the holiness that we aspire to is really in emulating God. And so with that as background, we will hear from the opening verses of Parashat Kiddushim, Leviticus chapter 19, verses 1 through 4. Here in the sanctuary, those verses can be found in the large blue Torah commentary books on page 894. And if you are watching us on live stream and you have a copy of the revised Torah commentary at home, you can find these same verses on page 798 of the revised Torah commentary. I knew I didn't put it very far. There it is. To read from the Torah this morning, we will call upon Rachel Eastman, and to honor the Torah with the Aliyah, we call upon Debbie and Mike Newman. Okay, so let's see. Mike, put your hand right there. And Rachel, this place for you. And yes, that is indeed your spot. Okay, we're ready for the blessing.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bocha bonu mikol ha'amim, v'notan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayidaber Adonai. I got it. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el kol adat b'nei Yisrael v'amarta alehem kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem ish imo ve'aviv tira'u ve'et shabtotai v'tishmoru ani Adonai Elohechem al tifnu el ha'elilim Ve'Elohim ha'secha lo ta'asu lachem ani Adonai Elohechem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher notanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notar b'tzorchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Terrific.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. You can have a seat right behind me. This time our thoughts turn to those in need of healing as we prepare to offer a prayer for healing found on page 371 of your Siddur. If you're watching us on live stream and you are thinking of someone in need of healing, I invite you to share the name of your loved one in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. And if you join us here in the sanctuary and you are thinking of someone in need of healing, I invite you to share their name out loud or in your heart. In a moment, we will show the names on our screen of our temple members in need of healing and their loved ones. We add to the names that you'll see Patricia Van Truren. And as we are observing Yom HaAtzmaut on this Shabbat, we think as well of those who were injured as they served in the Israeli Defense Forces, those who were injured in terrorist attacks that threatened the very survival of the state of Israel. We pray for Refuah Shlema, for a complete healing of body and spirit, as we join together at this time in singing the Mishaberach.
Mikol habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikol bless those in need of healing with Refuah Shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We continue now with the lifting and dressing of the Torah, found at the bottom of page 370. Please rise if you are able for Hagba and Galila.
V'zata Torah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael, Api Adonai b'yad Moshe. Ya ya la la la, ya ya la la la, ya ya la la la, la 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 la, ya la ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la.
Please be seated. They don't go any farther. The Haftarah portion this morning is from the prophet Amos. The prophet here is, in the spirit of holiness, telling the Israelites about some of the things that they have done wrong. To me, the message is that God is watching. That was implicit in Parshat Kedoshim with the phrase Ani Adonai or Ani Adonai Elohechem. But here the prophet makes it explicit in verse 8 that, behold, the Lord God has his eye upon the sinful kingdom. However, so, from time to time I like shortening the Haftarah portion. This is not one that you can shorten because this section is meant to be a direct line from sin and accountability to forgiveness and restoration. So you will be able to follow along with the Haftarah portion here in the sanctuary, beginning on page 999. And if you are watching on live stream and you have a copy of the Revised Torah Commentary at home, you can follow along with the Haftarah on page 814, and Debbie Newman will offer the Haftarah at this time. Okay, I have it all set up for you. It's all right here. I can take that. Okay, great. Okay, so your blessing is here, and your Haftarah is there.
Right, okay. Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen faithful prophets to speak words of truth. Praise to you, Adonai, for the revelation of Torah, and for your servant Moses, for your people Israel, and for prophets of truth and righteousness. Okay. To me, O Israelites, you are just like the Ethiopians, declares the Lord. True, I brought Israel up from the land of Egypt, but also the Philistines from Kaftor and the Arameans from Kir. Behold, the Lord God has his eye upon the sinful kingdom. I will wipe it off the face of the earth, but I will wholly wipe out the house of Jacob, declares the Lord. For I will give the order and shake the house of Israel through all the nations, as one shakes sand in a sieve, and not a pebble falls to the ground. All the sinners of my people shall perish by the sword. Who boast, never shall the evil overtake us or come near us. In that day I will set up again the fallen booth of David. I will mend its breaches and set up its ruins anew. I will build it firm as in the days of old, so that they shall possess the rest of Edom and all the nations once attached to my name, declares the Lord, who will bring this day to pass. A time is coming, declares the Lord, when the plowman shall meet the reaper, the treader of grapes, him who holds the bag of seed, when the mountains shall drip wine, and all the hills shall wave with grain. I will restore my people Israel. They shall rebuild ruined cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink their wine. They shall till gardens and eat their fruits. And I will plant them upon their soil, never to be uprooted from the soil I have given them, said the Lord your God. Praise to you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, rock of all creation, righteous one of all generations, the faithful God whose word is deed, and who every command is just and true. For the Torah, for the privilege of worship, for the prophets, and for this Shabbat, and that you, Adonai our God, has given us, for holiness and rest, for honor and glory. We thank and bless you. May your name be blessed forever by every living being. Praise to you, Adonai, for the Sabbath and its holiness.
We continue now as we prepare to return the Torah to the Ark. We turn to page 374. Please rise. Yahalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado.
Odoret b'shamayim vayaren keren le'amo tehillah lechol chazidav עץ חיים היא, למה חזיקים בה וצמחה מאושר דרכה דרכינם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה קדיש קדיש ימינו קדיש ימינו כקדם.
Please be seated. This week we celebrated Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. This year we marked 74 years since the founding of the state. It was the culmination of centuries of prayers and decades of settlement, activism, diplomacy, and military preparedness. The Israel of today is necessarily different than the one that eked out victory in 1948. When the state was founded, the primary task was absorbing immigrants from all over the world. They came first from Europe, leaving behind the ashes of the Holocaust. But soon they came from the Arab world as well. Feeding, housing, educating, and employing these immigrants was a monumental task that required sacrifice from virtually every Israeli. There was a common sense of purpose. The Israel of the 1990s was one that brimmed with optimism. The possibility of peace with the Palestinians brought hope to countless Israelis. But it was a peace that left out too many people. Militant Palestinians and right-wing Israelis both fought against the plan. It was the first time that it became socially acceptable for Jewish Israelis to call their prime minister a traitor. When Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated in 1995, the nation in many ways unraveled, reflecting a factionalism and distrust that had not been exposed before. This factionalism grew and grew. Civil discourse crumbled. Many Israelis lurched to the right, but the divisions were not only political, they were ethnic and religious. Finally, the division became so bad that Israel had to endure 4 national elections in 2 years. Then something happened that had never happened before. Following the 4th round of elections last year, 2 party leaders, who each aspired to be prime minister but could not do so on their own, came together and cobbled together a coalition of right-wing parties, left-wing parties, and even an Arab party. While Israel had had coalition governments before, none spanned the ideological spectrum so broadly, and none had ever included Arab Israelis. This coalition succeeded by promising the status quo, no breakthroughs on the peace process, but also no annexation of the West Bank. The coalition was formed just under a year ago in June 2021, and soon after succeeded in passing the country's first budget in 3 years. Doing something unprecedented like this required a commitment to democracy, to civility, and to stability. It required putting aside long-held ideologies about the peace process, settlements, and several other issues, and say that the highest national priority was democracy itself. It has not been easy. Members of the coalition have threatened to leave over military actions and over chametz in hospitals on Passover. In the last 2 months, there have been several terrorist attacks, one just a few days ago, which tested the ability of the government to bring security to the country. The coalition, just 1 year into its 4-year mandate, may yet fail. But so far it is held on the premise that working with people with whom you disagree fundamentally is still better than the alternative. Columnist and commentator Thomas Friedman theorizes that this could be a model for the United States. Back in January, he wrote a column in which he proposed that a moderate Democrat and a moderate Republican may share a presidential ticket. Imagine Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney running together with only one goal: to save democracy from the excesses and tribalism of the current partisan divide. Imagine Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez campaigning for a ticket that included Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney supporting Kamala Harris. It's a long shot, Friedman admits. Hard to imagine. But not impossible to imagine, because Israel has already done it within its more flexible parliamentary system. Friedman offered this almost fantasy within the context of Israel being the forerunner of so many trends that America eventually experiences. I see it slightly differently. Israel already exports amazing computer and healthcare technology from which people around the world benefit. Israel has taught people in arid regions across the globe how to conserve water in agriculture. Israeli rescue teams regularly show up to offer triage after earthquakes and other natural disasters. It has expanded economic opportunity and tourism to countries such as the United Arab Emirates. Now Israel has something new to share with the United States and many other countries whose democracies are weaker now than a generation ago. Putting aside political differences to focus on the greatest threat is possible. It requires dissolving tribalism and seeking commonality. It requires seeing your fellow citizen as both a rival and a partner, but never an enemy. It requires suppressing ideology for the greater goal of democracy and stability. Most of all, this unity government requires imagination and determination. Since 1948, Israelis have always had abundant supplies of both. It is what has enabled them to thrive and the foundation upon which they will continue to inspire. Shabbat Shalom. Our service continues now with the Aleinu, which is found in your Siddur on page 586 at the bottom of the page. Please rise if you are able for the Aleinu.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol elatet gedula liotzer bereshit shelo asanu kikoye aratzot velo husamanu kmishpchot adama shelo samech Elokeinu kahem vigor aleinu kichol almanam va'anachanu koreim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'ne'emar V'haya Adonai L'melech al kol haaretz V'yom hahu Yeh Adonai echad U'shema
We remain standing at this time for reading to introduce the Mourner's Kaddish. That reading is found on page 594. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. This Shabbat, we remember those for whom we are in the Shloshim, 30-day period of mourning. George Kirsch, brother of Daniel Kirsch, Frederick Marks, brother of Carlene Fleischman, Stephen Laskin, remembered by Laurel and Seth Kane, Nancy Schreiber, sister of Michael Goodman and aunt of Daniel Foyer, and David Rupley, cousin of Linda Postkanzer. We remember as well those whose yahrzeits occurred this week: Carol Alpiner, Ruby Bennett, Harvey Beer, Harry Blitz, Melvin Brown, Erwin Butensky, Cy Cooper, Walter Disler, Meyer Dubno, T. Thomas Vertig, Eileen Fields, Phyllis Friedland, Francis Friedman, Emma Hackman, Tilly Hausman, Beverly Z. Katz, Ruvain Kosakoff, Young Sang Lee, Fanny Lipman, Joseph May, Michael Plachette, Elaine Ross, Alan Sirota, Mark Sohn, Jane D. Stokes, Louis Tarshis, Paul Witter, Harry Yallis, and Charles Young. We remember the victims of the terrorist attack earlier this week in Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut: Yonatan Chavakuk, age 44, Oren Ben Yiftach, age 35, and Boaz Gol, age 49. We remember the names of 6 of the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust: Alvaro Cohen of Italy, age 7, Tony Lauer of Germany, age 11, David Lewenstein of Poland, age 2, Fega Nuchmovich of Czechoslovakia, age 5, Tuba Prucci of Romania, age 13, and Abba Fabrikovic of Lithuania, age 14. And on this Shabbat, when we have just observed Yom HaZikaron, a day of remembrance in Israel, we too, as a Jewish people, remember those members of Israel's armed forces, those Israelis who died in terrorist attacks. We remember their sacrifice to the state of Israel. We remember them all as we turn now to page 598, and we join together in the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'yizman kariv imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach leolam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha b'rechu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, amen. Please be seated. It is my pleasure at this time to call upon Howard Lieberman. Having offered the announcements last night as somewhat of a dress rehearsal, we call upon him again. Don't forget to read the different color, though, Howard, for Shabbat morning instead of Shabbat evening, as Howard offers Shabbat greetings and announcements.
Thank you, Rabbi, for the terrific introduction. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Shabbat Morning Service. Next Friday night, May 13th, we'll honor members at our annual Milestone Member Shabbat. Please join us as we thank them for their commitment to the Temple Emeth community and their memberships ranging from 5 to an amazing 60 years. Amazing. Temple member Nancy Mednick will reflect on her temple membership. The Strategic Planning Steering Committee will be hosting 2 member focus groups in May to solicit your opinions about Temple Emeth. The first will be held in person during next Friday's Oneg, following our milestone member Shabbat service. Another session will be held remotely on Zoom on Monday, May 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Your voices are essential as we plan for our future. Finally, if you haven't already, you have until May 23rd to RSVP for our annual Spring Gala. Celebrate Emeth will honor our longtime members Mark Chellimer, Amy Abrams, Barbara Balkin, and Carlene Fleischman. Thank you to this morning's volunteers in the live stream control room. Pauline Heck and Barbara Balkin are at the controls this morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Howard, and let me offer a thank you and yasher koach to Rachel Eastman for chanting from Parashat Kedoshim last night and this morning. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, our religious school students will be leading their peers in prayer. It will be our 3rd and 4th graders who lead the service. This is an annual Mother's Day tradition, which, like so many things, was interrupted by the pandemic. And back in the day, pre-pandemic, Mark Klausner of blessed memory would help prepare the students, and he would actually make sure they each had a flower to give to their mothers at the conclusion of the Mother's Day service. It was a beautiful tradition. And so we are going to take this opportunity tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to dedicate a plaque on the office that Mark used and which hosted so much lively conversation and which made our young people feel so at home. So following the service here on the Bima, we'll be dedicating a plaque on the door of his office. If you'd like to join us, you are welcome to. Our masking and social distancing protocols will be in place tomorrow for that service. And finally, we are about to conclude our service with the singing of Hatikvah. To prepare for Hatikvah, I invite you to turn in Mishkan Tefillah to page 377. On page 377, we find the blessing for the state of Israel. We'll offer it together first in Hebrew and then in English. Avinu shebashamayim, tzur Yisrael v'goalo. Barech et Medinat Yisrael Reshit Smichat Geulatenu. Hagen aleha be'evrat chastecha, ufros aleha sukat shlomecha, ushlach orcha v'amitcha l'rasheha, sareha v'yoetzeha, v'tak neim be'etza tova milfanecha, v'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam liyoshveha, v'nomar amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there, and let us say, Amen. Hatikvah, our closing song, is found on page 678 of Mishkan Tefillah. Please rise if you are able for Hatikvah.
Ulfata Mizrach Kadima Be'eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim Liot am chofshi be'aretzeinu be'eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim.
We remain standing now as we join together in the Kiddush. You can go get it. We'll wait for you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
L'chaim. And we join together in the Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. We have reached the end of our service. If you've been watching on live stream, it's your last chance to post a comment or greeting in the chat or comment section of the live stream platform. It can be a Yasher Koach to Rachel Eastman, or it can be a Yom Ha'atzmaut wish for the state of Israel, or it can simply be the thing that we are going to say to one another here in the sanctuary as we conclude our worship. We turn to one another and we say, Shabbat Shalom.